Fudge-A-Mania by Judy Blume, Chapter 8, Fudge-A-Mania. "How come you're in such a bad mood?" Sheila asked me the next morning. "It must be the weather," I grumbled. Actually, it had nothing to do with the weather, which was as gray and damp as usual. It had to do with my brilliant idea from last night. Somehow, when I woke up this morning, my poison gas story sounded really weird. I wasn't sure Jimmy would buy it. And where would that leave me? After breakfast, I went back to bed. Dad says falling asleep when your body's not tired is a way of avoiding your problems. Maybe he's right. Because when I woke up an hour later, I still didn't know what to do about Jimmy. I looked out the window. The sun was making an effort to break through the clouds. Maybe I shouldn't worry yet, I thought. A lot can happen in a week. The Tubmans might decide they've had enough of Maine. They might be gone by the time Jimmy gets here. I got out my baseball cards and went down to the porch. I was laying them out alphabetically by players' last names when Mitzi showed up. I still can't believe Mitzi's father is Big Apfel. I wonder why Mrs. A didn't tell us about him, unless she's sick of people falling all over themselves when they find out who he is. I suppose I'd feel the same way if Dad were famous. Mitzi looked at my baseball cards. "That used to be Grandpa," she said when she spotted Big. "What do you mean used to be?" I asked. "He's still your grandpa, isn't he?" "Yes, but he's different now. He has more fat." "He was probably a lot younger when they took this picture," I said, holding up this card. She nodded. "Where's Fudge?" "He's planting a garden with his babysitter." "Where's the garden?" "Behind the house." "Will you take me?" I started to tell her to go by herself. After all, she'd walked all the way to our house on her own. But she looked at me with these big eyes. "Sometimes monsters live behind houses," she said, "and I didn't bring my monster spray." "Monster spray?" I said. "Grandma makes it for me. It's a secret formula. When you spray the monsters, they melt." Sounds like an interesting product. Dad would have a field day with it, I thought. He's in advertising. Commercials are his business. I can see it now. Mitzi's monster spray, made from a grandmother's secret formula. Spray twice a day and melt your monsters away. Mitzi held out her hand. "Will you walk me around the house?" How could I refuse? I walked her to the backyard where Sheila and Fudge were hard at work. They'd already dug out a plot of land. Now they were lining up rows of pink rocks from the beach. "You're planting rocks?" I asked. "Yes," Fudge said. "Rocks don't need sun or water. They don't get slugs. Animals can't eat them. And they never die." I looked at Sheila. "It was his idea," she said. "It was my idea," Fudge repeated. "I like this garden," Mitzi said. She got down on her hands and knees to help. "Mom and Dad are going to be surprised when they see your garden," I told Fudge. "I know," he said. "They're going to be surprised that you dug up this much grass to plant rocks, especially since this backyard doesn't belong to us." "Who does it belong to?" Fudge asked. "The people who own this house," I told him. "So," he said, "the people who own this house will be happy when they see my garden." "Maybe," I told him. "Or maybe they'll say, 'Who dug up our backyard?'" "Really, Peter," she said, "you're such a worrier." "Yeah, Pete," Fudge said, "you worry too much." "I don't worry," I told him. "I think ahead." When the rocks were all planted, 6 rows of them with 10 in each row, Mitzi scooped up a handful of dirt. "Now let's make mud pie!" "Mud pie?" Fudge said. "That's what they have for dessert at Tico Taco, right, Pete?" "But it's not made of mud," I told him. "Then why do they call it mud pie?" he asked. "Because it looks like mud," I explained. "Yum! Mud pie," Mitzi said, licking the dirt off her fingers. "Spit that out right now," Sheila told her. "That's full of bacteria." "Yum! Bacteria," Mitzi said. "I love bacteria. Don't you, Fudge?" "Bacteria is my favorite," Fudge said. Then he looked up at me. "What's bacteria, Pete?" "They're like germs," I told him. "Yum! Germs," Mitzi said. "Germs are really tasty." "Cooties are tasty too," Fudge said. "And slugs? Slugs are fat and juicy." "You two are disgusting," Sheila said. "Germy, germy, germs, and sluggy, sluggy slugs," Mitzi sang. "Yummy, yummy down my tummy." Fudge held his arms straight out to the sides and began to twirl. Mitzi copied him. They twirled around and around, faster and faster, until they got so dizzy they fell to the ground, screaming and laughing. Then they started all over again. "Stop that!" Sheila shouted. We can't, Fudge yelled, twirling and whirling. It's Fudge-A-Mania, Mitzi shrieked. Once you get it, you can never stop. I'm going to count to 3, Sheila shouted. But Sheila's threat didn't bother them. You better watch out, Fudge sang, because it's catching. He twirled over to me and swatted my behind. Now you've got it, Pete. You've got Fudge-A-Mania too. I started twirling slowly at first, then faster and faster until everything was a blur. I twirled over to Sheila and smacked her on the back. Look out, Sheila, you just got it from me. I did not catch anything from you, Sheila shouted. I will never catch anything from you. The door to the house slammed and out marched Libby. She was wearing her Snoopy t-shirt. It's so big it hangs down to her knees. She stomped across the yard. Just what exactly is going on here? She asked. She didn't wait for an answer. And how am I supposed to sleep with this racket? Sleep? Mitzi asked. Now? Yes, now, Libby said. It's only 10 o'clock in the morning. You sleep until 10 o'clock in the morning? Mitzi said, like she couldn't believe it. Libby put her hands on her hips and glared. I try. But morning is the best time to play, Mitzi said. Who is this kid? Libby asked Sheila. Mitzi Apfel, Sheila said. A neighbor. I'm 5, Mitzi told her, and I walked here all the way by myself. I didn't need anyone to show me the way. I'll tell you what you need, Libby began, but Mitzi didn't wait to hear what Libby had to say. She raced off shouting, It's Fudge-A-Mania! Fudge followed Mitzi. Sheila chased both of them. You're all maniacs, Libby shouted. Fudge-A-Maniacs, I added. Either Libby didn't get my joke or she decided to ignore it, because she said, This is all your fault, Peter. Chaos follows you and your family. Chaos, I said. I don't believe I know him. That got Libby really mad. Chaos, she yelled, a state of utter confusion or disorder. Then she stomped back to the house and went inside, letting the screen door slam behind her. I couldn't help laughing. When Mom and Dad saw Fudge's garden, I expected them to really let him have it. They've always taught us to respect other people's property. But when Fudge explained his reasons for planting rocks, Mom said, That's very good thinking. A good babysitter encourages creative thinking, Sheila said. But doesn't this show a lack of respect for other people's property? I asked. Well, Mom said, it would have been better if Fudge had checked with us before he started, but his idea was so well thought out. Rocks don't need sun or water. Animals can't eat them. Yeah, I said, I've heard all about it. Grandma wandered across the yard with Buzzy Sr. She took one look at Fudge's garden and said, Isn't my grandson an original, Buzzy? Actually, it was mostly my idea, Sheila said. That's not what you said this morning, I shouted at Sheila. This morning you said it was his idea. Just shut your face for once, Peter Hatcher, she shouted back. Who's going to make me? I yelled. Children, Grandma said. Let's be kind. Kind is a word your grandson doesn't know, Muriel, Sheila shouted. He knows it, Grandma said, but sometimes he forgets what it means. And she doesn't? I asked. Sometimes she forgets too, Grandma admitted. I don't see why you two can't get along as well as your dogs, Buzzy Sr. said. I looked toward the house. Turtle and Jake were playing together. You'd think Turtle would show more loyalty. You'd think he'd understand about Sheila and me. Tootsie grabbed my leg. Up, Pete, up! Not now, I said. Now! Now! No! But I wasn't in the mood for baby tricks, so I shook her off and she fell over on her backside. It took a few seconds for her to react. Then she scrunched up her face, her mouth started twitching, her breath came fast. She made her little hands into fists, shut her eyes tight, and opened her mouth. Wah! When she got going, you could hear her a mile away. What happened, Tootsie Pie? Dad asked as he lifted her into his arms. Tootsie kept screaming and Mom looked at me. Was that necessary, Peter? Was what necessary? I said. Mom just shook her head. You see how much trouble you cause for everyone? Sheila shouted at me. How come I'm getting blamed for this? I thought. All I did was ask one simple question. Fudge held his arms out to Mom. Up, he said. Up. 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 You want to play baby? Mom asked. Goo goo gaga, Fudge said, jumping into Mom's arms. You're getting heavy, Mom said, planting a kiss on his head. But not too heavy for my mommy, right? I shook my head, then turned away and watched Dad galloping around the yard with Tootsie on his shoulders. In a minute, Tootsie was laughing. I remember when Dad carried Fudge that way. And there's a photo of me on his shoulders, too. I'm laughing really hard and grabbing Dad's hair. He had a lot more to grab then. Go, horsey, Tootsie called as Dad galloped in the other direction. Being a baby is so easy, I thought, riding around on Dad's shoulders, knowing he'd never let you fall, and doing and saying whatever you please without worrying about what the other guy will think. Grandma put her arm around my shoulder. It's not easy being the firstborn, is it? I looked at her and smiled. She knew exactly what I was feeling.